It's a bit of a horror cliché, the evil monster with the glowing red eyes, but can you imagine the terror you would feel if you saw such a thing, all alone in the dead of night? When I was 15, my friends and I were in a field behind one of their houses. It was about 1:30 a.m. We'd been out there for hours when suddenly my friend Gabby says, "What the F is that?" We all turned to see this very large creature with glowing red eyes lying on the ground with Gabby's dog and cat. We all start screaming and get up to run away. I turn around at one point to see where my friends are, and the creature starts standing up. It must have been 7 feet tall, with broad shoulders and what appeared to be wings. I can't tell you what it was, but the descriptions of the Mothman are very similar to what I saw. I'm sure everybody knows about the Mothman and the idea that this entity shows up as a harbinger of doom from time to time. Well, the following story seems to corroborate this idea. I'll never forget this night for the rest of my life. It was the night of September 10, 2001. I woke up in the middle of the night to see someone sitting at the foot of my bed. It was pitch black, and I looked over and I saw the eyes. These ruby red eyes looking right at me, and the shape of a huge body, somehow darker than the black of the room. I didn't know what to do. I knew if I called out, there was nothing anyone could do to help me before it got to me. So I just slowly pulled the cover over my head and pretended to be asleep. I couldn't sleep for hours, and when I finally couldn't feel its presence anymore, I plucked up the courage to turn on the lamp by my bed, and of course there was nothing there. I checked the doors and windows. Both were closed and locked. I checked under the bed and in the closet. Nothing. I settled back into bed thinking that was the most unsettling dream I've ever had. When my radio alarm came on at its regular time to wake me up, instead of music, it was playing a news story about a plane hitting the World Trade Center. Physical trace evidence is somewhat rare in paranormal cases. The next story you're about to hear is one of those rare cases. I was in my kitchen making a cup of tea, and I moved into the living room to wait for the water to boil. My living room is on the ground floor, but one section is elevated due to the house being built on uneven ground. Towards one end of the living area, we have a door with a glass window built into it, which leads out onto a veranda. As I looked through this glass door, I saw 2 gigantic red eyes staring back at me. At first I thought it was a reflection from something inside my house, despite the fact that we don't have any red lights from any type of electronics. I moved back and forth to try to see if the eyes were reflected in the glass, and as I moved closer to the wall on the side the eyes were spotted, I could see that the eyes went behind the wall as I moved. In my opinion, this confirmed that the eyes came from a source outside of the house. As you can imagine, I got pretty scared and went back into the room my dog was in. My phone was in this room, so I didn't take a photo of what I saw. Besides, photo evidence was not on my mind at this moment. I'm trying to think of a reason for why there would be 2 glowing red circles outside of my house. I can't really think of anything as I live out in the country, and this wall was facing the woods, and not any type of neighbouring buildings. Not to mention, judging from the scale, the eyes looked like they were pretty close to my door. They came from a source that was on the railing side of my veranda. I went back out to check on the eyes a few minutes later, and they were gone. The next day, I walked out onto the veranda where I saw the eyes, and the fencing that we put up to protect the dogs from slipping off the edge, where there is an opening in the railing, has been ripped off. This is in the area where the eyes were seen, which makes me believe it must have been a human. The fencing was connected with strips and curved nails, and the nails have been ripped out of the wood. I don't know of anything other than a human that has the ability to rip out nails like that. Next I have for you one of the more bizarre and unique encounters that I have heard for a long time. This occurred in Evanston, Illinois, in the spring of 2020. I live in Evanston, Illinois, just north of Chicago. I was asked by my mother's friend to move some stuff to a storage unit nearby. I had not been working because of COVID, and the pay was decent, so I went ahead and agreed. It was raining all day, off and on, but at times it got so heavy that I couldn't transfer boxes from my car to the unit, so I'd just get comfortable inside the unit and listen to some music while I wait for the rain to clear up. It's cozy in there, to be honest, and the rain just keeps getting worse. It's not very cold out, though. I'm just chilling when I start hearing this banging noise from nearby. It sounds like something hitting metal at first. I think that maybe there was a car accident on the nearby highway, which was North Lincoln Avenue, Highway 41. But then I realized it was coming from the other direction, and I really don't want to go outside and get wet. I tell myself that somebody probably dropped something, like nothing serious. But I continue hearing various banging noises. I still don't bother checking, but as it continues, I decide to check it out since the rain had let up a bit. I walk outside and turn the corner, and I see this massive hole in the fence leading to a little wooded area at the North Shore Channel Trail. I see this white thing moving near and under the dumpster by the fence. I'm thinking that it was a large white garbage bag, but it just doesn't look right. I'm confused and I'm trying to get a closer look at this thing. I was maybe 100 feet or so away from it, and I see something sticking out of it, and it's making a clicking sound. I say, "Hello, who's that?" I immediately regret yelling this out, because something big squeezes out from underneath the dumpster. It looks like a pile of fleshy tissue with spike-like protrusions. It stands 4 feet tall, but then it extends up to over 6 feet. It looks like a humanoid spider or other insect, but with white flesh. It doesn't have an exoskeleton, just smooth white flesh. The head is weird, kind of insect-like, with no mouth that I could see. The eyes were human-like and had a reddish glow. It had long slits along the side of its head. It stood there clicking and watching me. I could sense that it didn't want me there. I was wondering why I was still there and hadn't run off, but I was frozen in place and terrified. I had heard about the Chicago Mothman and was wondering if this may have been it, but it didn't resemble anything that I had ever heard about. Then I felt a sudden rush of calm come over me, and I was able to break the trance I was in. I hauled ass back to the storage unit, locked it up, got into my car, and quickly left. When I looked back in the direction of the creature, it was gone. I returned the next day and finished unloading the boxes from the car as fast as I could. This happened in the spring of 2020. I haven't told anyone else about this. This report really grabbed my attention, not just for the uniqueness and the strangeness of it all, but for a certain detail the experience I mentioned, the clicking sound that the creature made. In one of my earliest videos, I described an ET experience that a man had with an insectoid creature in his bedroom. He described the clicking noise that the creature made, and he was able to recreate the noise. Here it is. And up next, November 2019, Michigan. So it's an autumn Sunday evening, and the sun had been down for a bit. Most of the leaves had fallen by now, but I recall it being an unusually warm night for that time of year. Everyone in my house was winding down for the night and preparing for the work/school week. I'd say around 10:30, I decided to let my dogs out one last time before turning in for the night. I go to open our back door, which is a giant glass sliding door wall window, and my dogs are right at my feet behind me, ready to bust out of the door as soon as it opens wide enough. I'm glad I didn't let them out, because I guarantee if they saw what I briefly did, they would have both charged towards it, and it would have just been bad news. I open the door, and where the edge of our yard ends and the brushy field begins, keep in mind this brush is a bit taller than I am, and I'm 5 feet tall exactly. And I see this pale, greyish figure standing amidst the brush at the edge of my yard. The only reason I noticed it in the first place was because the noise my door made seemed to have startled it. So it made a noise in the dry fallen leaves, which then caused me to direct my attention towards this noise, which is when I saw it fleetingly duck down and take off further into the field behind my house. It's difficult to describe, but due to what I saw, being familiar with coyotes, feral cats and other animals that I'm used to seeing around the property, it had remarkably human characteristics, given its height and how it crouched over before moving in bound-like strides into the field. And that's another thing I noticed, was that it didn't make the sound of what a human would, or any animal that is native to this area, for that matter, would make. The pace wasn't quick, multiple steps like a human, deer or coyote. They were like lengthy, bounding strides, and the sound it made hitting the ground had a weight to it. The tread was not light. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it sounded big. It kind of took my breath away, and I was left startled. But due to what I did see, believing what I saw to bear resemblance to a human, I sheepishly called out, "Hello? Is someone out there?" But I'm still standing in my doorway, kind of frozen in mild fear. I yell again, "Hello?" This captures the attention of my husband and my aunt. My husband comes downstairs to see why I was yelling outside, as did my aunt. I explained to both of them, kind of frantically, what I had just witnessed. My aunt was spooked, and my husband went upstairs to get a flashlight and his air rifle. I'm an animal lover, and I don't like the idea of him shooting any animals, even problem animals, with something that can do serious damage like a real gun. So he uses an air rifle, but it can still wound and kill small game, like a raccoon or something. My husband and I both go outside into the backyard, him with the rifle and light, and we begin scanning the pitch-black overgrown field, to no avail at first. Maybe after 5 minutes of looking, my husband hops on top of his sedan that's parked outside to get a better view of the field or any movement through the brush, and continues looking. His gaze stops in one particular direction though. He hops down and quietly approaches me in the yard and points into the direction of what he was looking at. About 20 yards into the field, in the direction closer toward the back of my neighbour's property, there are 2 glowing orange-red eyes looking right at us through the brush, somewhat low to the ground. When he gets me to see what he's seeing, he decides to shoot in the general direction of this thing, to maybe startle it a bit, to see how it moves. He did this several times, and it didn't flinch. Then he decided he would try to aim his fire directly at it, to get a reaction, and he's a damn good shot. He hits it in what I imagined to be the face, and it sort of jumps up, and when it landed, it was a solid-sounding thud against the ground. All the while, it did not break its gaze on us. After hitting the ground, it moved further back into the field, without running away necessarily. It kept eye contact with us the entire time, almost as if it was walking backwards, not once averting its gaze. It eventually moved far enough back that we had to jump onto the car to still be able to see it. After several minutes of this, it had moved beyond our visual, so we hopped down and went inside. It's worth mentioning that there wasn't any sort of light that would cause reflective eyes, aside from the moon, which wasn't even full, and it was very dark. We purposefully kept our lights off, and the eyes looked as though they weren't even reflecting light, but more so emitting it.